Hello and welcome to Around the Nest as we J-Talk our way through the Toronto Blue Jays minor league organization. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler of the Lansing Lugnuts, and over the course of this week's show, we have a ton to talk about. In New Hampshire, well, things were going a little bit of a basebrawl theme, and so we'll talk about that and what occurred during Daniel Norris's debut, which otherwise was pretty darn impressive for the Fisher Cats at the AA level. Also, AAA Buffalo. What's going on with the Buffalo Bisons? We'll hear from Ben Wagner in Buffalo. We'll also speak with Tyler Murray or Al Hernandez with the A-Advanced Dunedin Blue Jays and check the latest with the DJs coming off the All-Star game and heading into the second half of this season. At the single-A level, I'm joined by Trey Wilson to call Lansing Lugnuts baseball, and so we'll talk all about Midwest League action. The Lugnuts just broke for their All-Star break. 4 Lugnuts representing the team in West Michigan at the 50th Annual MWL All-Star Game. Now the Lugnuts have kicked off their second half. Beneath us, meanwhile, the Vancouver Canadians have gotten things started as well, and so have the short season, the rookie level, Bluefield Blue Jays. We expect to be joined by Kevin Fitzgerald with the Bluefield Blue Jays. We'll hear from him, and we'll talk all about what's going on in the Appy League. We start off this week with Ben Wagner with the AAA Buffalo Bisons, and then we'll leap right into it with more of a hot-button topic that has arisen very recently. Have you heard about the words from Mark Emmert?
No. Give me a Reader's Digest version.
I'll give you this version, which is, it's caused the hashtag ReallyMark across Twitter, which is spread about in the late morning and throughout the afternoon today, with Mark Emmert of the NCAA simply saying that if they happen to pay the players, it would cause the NCAA to be like minor league sports. And everybody knows that minor league sports in America doesn't draw and doesn't give anything to fan experience. In fact, minor league sports is terrible with the fan experience. I know with you and the Buffalo Bisons, that might not necessarily be true.
Well, I think, I'm not a fan of the NCAA or anything that he's done under his leadership, first and foremost. So a statement like that really doesn't surprise me, which is unfortunate because the NCAA and college basketball, for me personally, is such a big part of my life and was such an awesome experience in my childhood. What he should do is take the 2-block walk and go down the street to Victory Field and just see what the minor league experience is instead of getting out of his stuffy office and making way too much money and then hobnobbing around America. That's really concerning. From a Buffalo perspective, also, and just knowing what we know about college athletics versus even how minor league baseball operates, remember, we don't pay the players. Our first and foremost 100% dedication is to the fun, affordable family entertainment that in a Buffalo setting, we offer at Coca-Cola Field for the people of Western New York and Southern Ontario. And I have to imagine, well, one, I know every organization that I have been associated with in the past, plus knowing the operation of all the other 13 league teams, that is the primary objective. And we're all in the same business, one, to be a staple in the community, have grassroots for the people that work in and out there. And, man, the NCAA, that really burns me to hear how somebody would take a jab like that.
Let me bring you to a much better topic on the subject of what you do for the fans. Tonight is Summerbash. Tell me about Summerbash at Coca-Cola Field.
Well, a lot of the country understands what the winter has been like, but now we can officially say summer has arrived in Western New York, and with the official start of summer coming this weekend, plus it's Blue Jays weekend and a long homestand for the Buffalo Bisons launching off here tonight with a couple of marquee events stapled around it, and Aaron Sanchez on the hill this evening. We're having a summer fun, and everything will be in the ballpark, summer music, upbeat atmosphere. If you want to participate in Hawaiian Shirt Sunday with us, feel free. And just a lot of just themes. You know, we're having a vibrant theme, more so than what is normal. So we want to just have everybody out and not see a lot of, jackets or long pants. We want shorts and short sleeves.
I love it. And it's Blue Jays weekend, starting with the Summer Bash, right into Blue Jays weekend. And I remember just how big Blue Jays weekend was last year. What are the big plans this year?
Well, it was so big last year because we had Blue Jays Day as a celebration of the affiliation. And it was a great, great day. with the help of the people in the front office from Toronto that got us a couple of alums, and it's going to happen that way. But now we have doubled down, if you will. We had a Blue Jays weekend on Saturday and Sunday, including the Rochester doubleheader that we've got tomorrow at 5:35. We will have Kelly Gruber and Fred McGriff both on hand and available to sign autographs on the concourse, and everything with Blue Jay trivia on some of our in-game promotions, for example. We'll have special uniforms that the Bisons will be wearing that are very Blue Jay-centric, a little bit of retro style. Of course, we already mirrored the numeral and the letter font that the Blue Jays have, but we'll also be wearing that early 1980 to mid-1980 style with the Blue Jay face that was right in the chest of those classic V-neck uniform tops. The Bisons have put their spinning buffalo in the center of the chest with that Bison script, much like the Blue Jays were as well. So, it's really cool. It's really cool. We're going to have those team jerseys. Fans can also buy them at the auction for charity. And, we're going to have a lot of Blue Jays people in and out as well. So a lot of the fans will have an opportunity to get very close and over a couple of long days at the ballpark. And the weather is going to be awesome, so it'll be a great atmosphere here.
On the baseball side, things have taken a turn as well. Wrapped up a long road trip at Toledo. It started in Syracuse. It just finished up in Columbus. And you finished things up yesterday with a couple of victories.
Much-needed victories, I think, from a Buffalo perspective. It could have been a 2-win road trip for the Herd, but they bounced back after a suspended game on Wednesday night, won the completion of that one with a couple of long balls, Jared Mastriani included, and Jared Gettert, and then a couple of long shots as well in the nightcap. Pushed Buffalo to victory, and that's hopefully much-needed momentum for an offense that had been struggling and not necessarily kicked away some difficult pitching performances, but yesterday you had to grind through a 4-run first from Austin Bibbins-Dirks, and the offense answered back, and Buffalo would score 7 unanswered, and they got solid relief as well. So, those are the kind of things that hopefully start to settle things down from a roster standpoint that Buffalo has been kind of jarred by with movement from the major leagues as well.
We've talked about him a lot, but I don't mind talking about Bobby Korecki again because it seems to me every time he comes in, it's 3 up and 3 down. I believe that the stats I saw in the month of June, the opposition is batting 1 for 24 against him. Every inning seems to be clean.
It has, and it's nothing but him attacking the strike zone and throwing strikes. He doesn't want to mess around getting deep into counts. He realizes he's more effective if he induces ground outs and, it frequently will make a strikeout here or there. But Korecki has been so efficient working not only up in the strike zone by hitting the upper corners, but also throwing down around guys' knees. If they do make contact, the majority of the time it's soft, and it's resulted in 1, 2, 3 at bat. And that was indicative of a very short game number 1 that he was able to close out for his 7th win. And he bounces back, and guess what? He closes 2 games in the same day, and he gets the save in both situations. It's been a long time since it happened in Buffalo. It hardly ever happens in baseball today that anybody, let alone somebody that's been in the big leagues the same year, would be even allowed to appear twice in one day.
Man, oh man. He's just been that way for the Buffalo Bisons recently. It's the offense that has been very good. Korecki and members of the bullpen have been consistent. And my gosh, is Kevin Pillar hitting, and he's really turned it up another notch. Looking at Bluebird Banter, where we encourage folks, comment in, send in your questions for the show. And there's a question about Kevin Pillar raking in AAA since his demotion with neutral splits. The question is, do you think that he will take the next step? Can he become an MLB regular?
Yeah, I think so. And I think he just needs an opportunity to get a larger body of work. I know he already had a month in the big leagues, and sometimes you have to think about matchups and guys that will overmatch that position player specifically if you're looking at the lineup card from a big league manager's chair. But the Blue Jays are clearly in the middle of a race, and they want to win, and they cannot afford to commit themselves to being part of the development at the major league level. So when you've got guys that you want to take a look at on the major league roster and you don't want to give a bigger sample size to, the time is not right now for Kevin Pillar to have that. But I'll tell you, he's deserved an opportunity if the next situation comes around where the Blue Jays are going to look at having somebody bat on the right side of the plate and get in there. There's no doubt that he has had zero hangover effect. Historically, he has hit everywhere he has gone. and he's had to hit to prove himself until he gets that next opportunity. So I think the longer and the more Kevin Pillar now understands about the game as well, especially about the big league approach and making adjustments and staying true to himself and within himself, that's just one more rung that he'll have to climb to get and stay at the major league level.
I remember one thing with Kevin Pillar when he first joined us in Lansing, that he had told me his parents gave him permission, chase baseball for 1 year, and then hopefully he could go out and find a real job. I'm not sure how true that story was, but after that point, and as things have gone on, you've said it, it's been his track record, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. Another question from Bluebird Banter about a player who's not playing, or at the very least has been limited, checking in for the latest on Sean Nolan.
Well, Sean landed on the disabled list after his last start in Toledo. It was a tough pill for him to swallow, and it's something that I interviewed him about as well on, it was Wednesday, and he was very disappointed, that the injury crept back up and pulled the groin. It's something that's been really lingering since last as well. And when it happened in Buffalo, he missed 3 weeks, 20 games total, and got back up. His pitch count had just started to get elevated, and then all of a sudden, he was actually on the mound in Columbus. My apologies, but when he was on the mound in Columbus, he turned around and Ryan Goins noticed a wince, and he didn't like what he saw in the body language. So Gogo came over, asked Nolan, and by that time, that got the attention of Boone Chung, our trainer, manager Gary Allenson, and Randy St. Clair, the pitching coach. So they immediately bolted out and had to check in and see what was going on with Sean. And then, of course, under further evaluation, the groin pull was once again crept up, and he was very disappointed that he had to go on the shelf again. But no more was the reason, because of how well he was throwing at the beginning of the year. So he's had 2 major setbacks this season, unfortunately, and there's no timeline right now moving forward.
Our time always goes so quick with Ben Wagner with the Buffalo Bisons. Time for one more question, and it's our question of the week. We're about to be joined by Tom Gauthier with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, and they enjoyed themselves a rhubarb this past week. And so, Ben, any bench-clearing situations or any moments stand out in your memory?
Well, not from this season. The one time that I thought things were going to escalate was actually manager Torey Lovello, before he went on to the Indians organization and then to the Red Sox and then obviously Blue Jays, now circa the Red Sox again. Coincidentally enough, it was against Rochester, who's in town today. Torey Lovello didn't like the way something was said in his direction or towards his club's direction. On his way up the third base coaching line to coach that half inning, he looked over, and then all of a sudden he starts jawing back and forth with the manager of Rochester. And then the two meet out in front of the dugout, and then the melee ensues. So everybody had to get calmed down for that. That was one of the more interesting moments that I've ever seen as well. So, but honestly, not too much heated stuff has happened here in Buffalo since I've been in town since 2007. In A-ball, I did have a brawl. Those are always unfortunate because guys get hurt. But yeah, nothing like we saw earlier this week with New Hampshire.
No, we're about to check in with Tom. Ben, thank you very much for joining us, and have great fun on a spectacular weekend at Coca-Cola Field.
There's no doubt I will be, and thanks for the time this week, guys.
Hey, absolutely. And from Ben, now to AA New Hampshire in the Eastern League, and Tom Gauthier. Tom, how are you?
Hey, Jesse, good afternoon. It's a beautiful day in Trenton, New Jersey after our 5:45 arrival with no hotel rooms. Things are finally settled down and ready to go.
I have family that's going to be actually at that game today. I have 2 cousins, and it's a little boy's birthday party, and they're really looking forward to seeing the Thunder and the Fisher Cats, and I've told them which team they need to root for. I gave them very specific instructions.
Well, that's a no-brainer, but it's a good thing you didn't tell me that beforehand, because they probably would have been on my list of calls to make it 6 o'clock this morning when the hotel said, yeah, we can't get you in until lunchtime today. They would have had 35 house guests.
I don't think they would have minded a little bit, but there's only so much food that you can feed a baseball team. Tom, the news this week. Yeah. The news this week was about a problem of a different matter, and it marred a terrific AA debut for Daniel Norris, in that it drew a lot of attention away from it. Before we get to the rhubarb, let's talk about Norris arriving at AA and your impressions of how things went for him.
I think things went pretty well. I think that he probably learned a couple of things that he can and can't get away with here, and that there is a big difference between the Florida State League and between the Eastern League, and also between the ballpark down there in Toronto, or Dunedin rather, and the ballpark in Manchester. He gave up 2 home runs, first 2 that he'd given up since August of last season. Had not allowed a home run in the very pitcher-friendly FSL, and he comes up here and he gives up 2 home runs that are really not that impressive of home runs. One was a very cheap one, just get over the wall in right field. The other one was hit with a little more authority, but still not anything to write home about, where a guy hits the ball 400 feet and you say, wow, he's a really good hitter. You say he hit it to the right part of the ballpark on a bit of a windy night where the ball's going to get pushed out like that. So all things considered, he looked pretty impressive, but I think that he learned a little bit. I think he learned that, you have to be able to pitch inside, and he tried to, and ended up hitting a guy, one of the guys that actually hit the home run against him, the second one that barely made it out, and I think that sort of kind of steamrolled and eventually led to everything that happened later on in the game.
Because there's always build-up. Everybody will see the video or maybe a GIF or maybe a still shot photo from here or there, and there are some terrific photos. But what was the build-up to everything breaking down?
Unfortunately, I don't think there was a lot where you look at it and say, this is the reason why it happened. And I think you almost wish that there was something like that you could point to and say, this is the reason where things tipped. If anything, you want to put a little bit of blame and put a little bit of onus on the umpires as well, because it started out in the 6th inning. Daniel Norris got a visit from Jim Sykowski midway through an at-bat against Stetson Alley. Alley had the home run against him, and Jim says, hey, this is your last batter. Pitch this guy inside because you've seen what he can do. It's a home run. I don't know if he said pitch him inside, but that was the gist that Norris was trying to do, because he hit the home run just by extending the arms and flicking the wrist out to right field over the short wall. So, you have that conversation, and he goes 3-0. He's trying to pitch him in, and the ball just keeps rising a little bit and eventually grazes him in the shoulder. He goes to first. Well, after a double play the next inning, Andy Burns comes up. Burns has a home run to the opposite field tonight that barely got out. Their starting pitcher is cruising right along. Hits him, looked like it was a slider, or may have been a cut fastball that really took off on him, whatever it was, hits him in the front foot, in the heel, clearly not intentional, and if it was intentional, it was a very poor effort. So Burns gets hit, and right away, Doug Del Bello, the plate umpire, steps out and gives a warning to both benches, but he does it from behind the hitting circle, and that was part of the problem as well, because the next inning, Eric Sekula comes out, throws the first pitch inside, and in the moment, you don't think anything of it. Well, the very next pitch is up, and it hits right on the back of the collar of Jarrett Cunningham, right below the helmet on the top of the shirt. Cunningham slams the bat in the helmet. He runs out there, and then all heck breaks loose for the next 2 or 3 minutes. And I think that's really what started it. That's what ignited it. But I don't know that there's one thing you look at and say, oh well, it was sort of warranted. It was one of those that was probably a little silly to happen the way that it did. And come to find out, there were many coaches that didn't know a warning was issued, and potentially a guy like Sekula being down in the bullpen, he may not have known that a warning was issued either. So it was, I think tempers flared pretty quickly.
I read, too, that there was some backstory that in a little bit, just before all of this was about to break down, you were about to welcome Mrs. Meacham onto the air.
It's funny because she actually came in. The pitch happened. I start calling the brawl, and as it settles down, and because it's the first time I've ever been involved in anything like that, I turn around, and she's walking in. So she's walking in just as this is happening. So it was the perfect time for her to come in and have a seat and be able to – she didn't even know that even happened. She was walking from our suites to the press box, and you can't see the field from there. So she walks in, and she sees everybody on the field, and she's a little bit exasperated as to what happened. But it was a perfect time for us to talk with her about a mission trip she's taking to Africa in early July. So we had about 20 minutes to really sit down and talk with her and learn a lot about the trip and the work that her and Bobby do in Africa.
So this was the first benches clearing brawl that you've seen?
It was. I've never. I know that I saw a guy get hit in the head. We were playing the Clinton Lumber Kings 2010 in Bowling Green, and a guy got hit in the head. He had hit 2 home runs that game, and I think he had taken the reliever deep, or somebody had taken one of our relievers deep, and then he threw a hissy fit and tried to hit the next guy and ended up bouncing on the top of his helmet. Nick Franklin was actually the batter in Seattle now. That was one of those where it's bad because that's not that people's lives are worth any less, but he's one of those $1.5 million guys, big signing bonus guys, and he got ejected, but our manager was out there to take him out before the ejection could really even happen. So that was really the closest that I ever came to seeing a benches clearing brawl.
There was a question sent in from Bluebird Banter, simply wondering, how does a broadcaster call a brawl? Is there a proper way to go about it? Here's your first real opportunity. You had a massive one, so thinking back on it, is there a good way, or is there a way that a broadcaster should make sure to stay away from?
I think that it was funny because I said, when you see something like this, if you're walking down the road and you see something like this, you may use your normal, everyday, colorful language. And maybe not for you, Jesse, but for somebody not as classy like myself, we may have a different way of describing that with different adjectives. So, number one, I was impressed that I didn't let one of those slip when this thing broke out. But no, it was funny because I talked about it after, and I heard the highlight after the game, and I said, I don't know how well I called that. And I listened to it after. It happened so quickly, and it's over so quickly that there's really nothing you can do. And what's really hard about it that I saw is that there are different scrums breaking out. There's one fight in front of the mound, and all of a sudden one breaks out over by the third base tag, and all of a sudden there's another little bit of action out in right field. You literally can't keep up with all of it. And the biggest problem is that you can't see individual players. The only time we saw somebody was when they broke out of onto the periphery, and it was Mike McDade of all people, and Casey Lawrence is trying to keep him away from the group. And Casey Lawrence is 160 pounds. Mike McDade's about 250. So you can imagine how well that was going for Casey. But that was really the only individual action that we saw. And then we saw Stetson Alley, actually. He got hit in the head at one point. He was standing off to the side, did not look good the next day. So we think, potentially a concussion or something for him. He's really the only guy that came out with an injury and actually was removed after the fight because of an injury. But it's really tough to call because it happened so fast. And for this example, there was really no true build-up where it was a long, simmering type of feud.
I heard once from Tom Nichols, whom you and I know very well, there was a situation where there was a build-up between games where my players were talking about all that was going to happen, and I asked Tom about it, and he said, rule of thumb, the more guys talk before a game or after a game, the less likely anything is to happen. It is those things that suddenly erupt in the middle of a game out of nowhere. That's where things are the most dangerous, and that happened with you.
Yeah, I think it's what is it, the sleeping tiger or the crouching tiger, whatever you want to call it. You kind of let that sleeping dog lie because you start to get him agitated, and eventually he'll wear himself out. But this, happened very, very quickly, and it's one of those where it's an adrenaline thing. I can see how the players get involved in it. And as baseball fights go, this was a dandy. It was, it had guys throwing punches, it had guys wrestling. It wasn't just one of those where you had a couple of guys shoving each other. Somebody throws a helmet and there were people off to the side just looking at it saying, what the heck's going on here? It was a legitimate kerfuffle. If you saw the replay and you saw some of those highlights after, it was there were guys that were throwing punches and guys that had sore hands the next day.
Whew. Tom Gauthier with the AA New Hampshire Fisher Cats, currently on the road all this weekend in Trenton, New Jersey. Then up they go to Portland, Maine to take on the Sea Dogs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they're back home Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday against New Britain. I believe you have a doubleheader in the midst of that. Is that really 5 games in 4 days at home against New Britain?
It is. It's 5 games in 4 days. We have a doubleheader with them on Friday night, and then they come back on July 6th. Or no, I'm sorry, July 7th they come back, part of an 8-game homestand. We have a doubleheader with them at that point as well. First day in on July 7th, we had a series back in April, back-to-back day games that were both wiped out, one because of rain and one because we had snow and ice in the field. So we've had 2 games postponed with them back-to-back in early April, followed by an off day, no less. So it was a great 3-day stretch. But we'll have 2 doubleheaders coming up in the next 2.5 weeks, all leading into the All-Star break in mid-July.
You can find Tom Gauthier on Twitter, TomGauthier21, the New Hampshire Fisher Cats AA. Tom, thank you very much, and best of luck in New Jersey.
Thanks, Jesse. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it. From Tom, down the ladder we go. This is Around the Nest. Jay talking our way around the Toronto Blue Jays organization. And we're joined now by the voice of the people, Tyler Murray of the Dunedin Blue Jays in the Florida State League. Tyler, how are you?
Jesse Goldberg Strassler, I'm great. Good to hear from you, my man, and looking forward to being back on the program.
Well, it's good to have you back. Let's begin first. We began with Ben Wagner with Mark Emmert's comments. That brought his emotions up. We just heard the emotions get raised with the Eastern League and the base brawl that occurred. Tyler, let's begin first with, did you hear about Mark Emmert's comments from the NCAA?
Recently, no. Why don't you fill me in there?
All right. So to briefly let you know all that went on and the hashtag really, Mark, that has occurred, and it's causing some folks some fun. Let's see if we can get this exact Emmert quote for the very fun of it. And we know that in the U.S., minor league sports aren't very successful, and with regard to either to fan support or fan entertainment.
Really, Mark? I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one at all. I mean, obviously, down here in the FSL, everyone's doing their best to draw out the fans and drum up the promotions, and obviously up there in the Midwest League, you guys are killing it, and I think Tom Goffier could have a better answer than I did with all the attendance they get up there in the Eastern League. So I don't know if that's a comment worth addressing, to be honest, Jesse, but that's interesting. Thanks for bringing my attention to it.
Well, I apologize, but there you go. Let's talk about Dunedin. All-Star break is now done. You now have the Lansing Lugnuts catchers. You've got Santiago Nessie, and you've got Jorge Size. Congratulations. Meanwhile, you've lost Daniel Norris up to AA and Derrick Chung. We've already seen Eric Sekula go right on up the ladder as well. So those promotions came. There was some transition. LB Dantzler's now joined the DJs as well. How's the second half begun for you?
Oh, so far so good. And the first guy you mentioned, the first guy I want to talk about is Danny Barnes, who filled in for Eric Sekula. He's definitely gone under the radar in terms of producing for the Blue Jays at the back of the bullpen. I'm sure you can agree, having seen Sekula last year with Lansing, how tough it is to replace a guy like that. And early on in the season, Danny Barnes was a little bit shaky, I think, as the setup guy, but since he's moved into that closing role, he's been perfect. Almost literally, he's given up just 4 hits in his 5 save opportunities, all successful so far this season. So Danny Barnes has been great, and he's pitching now, as you know, to a couple of different new backstops. Derrick Chung, a well-deserved promotion up to AA, and Chung is a guy who's worked hard these last, 16 months to develop a good relationship with everyone on this pitching staff and their rotation. And it's going to be a grind, I think, for Size and Nessie to develop the same kind of rapport with the Blue Jays rotation, talking about guys like Taylor Cole and Matt Boyd and everybody else. But maybe look at a guy like Kendall Graveman, who's pitched with Nessie before, and hopefully that'll be an easy transition for them. But it's going to be tough to replace Derrick Chung. I can say that for sure. But so far, so good, I'd say, for Santiago Nessie. A couple of RBI doubles in his last 2 games. So we're seeing the gap-to-gap power from him. And the future does look bright for the Blue Jays. We had a pretty exciting 5-4 walk-off win yesterday. After scoring no runs and getting 3 hits in the first 6 innings, the Bats finally woke up and took down a pretty good-looking Clearwater team who's got some good additions from the lower levels in the Phillies organization lately. So hopefully the Blue Jays can repeat their success in half number 2.
It's a question that a lot of folks get, and I wonder if you've received this. All right, you're into the playoffs in the first half. Record is wiped clean. You're now 0-0. What in the world are you playing for in the second half?
Tremendous question. We talked to Omar Malave, the manager, about this, and he led this team to half a dozen playoff berths maybe 10 years ago, and he's not concerned about that at all. Everyone, of course, is playing for their own careers, trying to move up on the ladder, and when you look at the day-to-day grind of baseball, it's a lot more enjoyable when you're winning ball games. So obviously, I'm sure the players have in the back of their minds, okay, we've already got the playoff berth clinched, so no need to worry about that, but you mentioned it earlier. Think about all the players that have been called up to AA from the Dunedin roster originally. We've got a lot of new players, and those guys are looking to continue the winning ways here in Dunedin, join the winning atmosphere. They don't want to be the reason or the perceived reason for the winning to stop. They want to come up here, continue the victories, and not let up at all, and be able to fill those holes that have been left by guys like Casey Hobson, Daniel Norris, and Derrick Chung, especially lately. So there's a lot of incentive there. Obviously, everyone's trying to play well for themselves, but you don't want to let your teammates down either. And these guys have been able to stay focused so far. And they've played 4 games that haven't really mattered in terms of playoff qualifications. And, you know, they've grounded out. They played quite well. We talked about yesterday's 5-4 walk-off win. That was a great way to start the second half.
Let's go back a bit. Let's go back to the All-Star break and the All-Star game itself. You didn't have to host. You could relax. You could go. You could enjoy yourself. There were DJs all over the place. How was the experience?
Oh, it was awesome. Yes, first things first. It's always nice to kick back and watch somebody else do the work to get an All-Star weekend prepared, but the Bradenton Marauders did a great job. That's the Pirates affiliate. They have a new renovated stadium. It was a beautiful experience. A lot of our fans from our booster club in Dunedin made the trip about an hour plus south, so not too far for them. But they had a great time. And for us, it was great to see the starting roster for the FSL North, the starting 9, consisted of 5 different Blue Jays. You had Taylor Cole on the mound, Derrick Chung behind home plate, Casey Hobson at first, Dwight Smith Jr. in left, and Dalton Pompey in center. Daniel Norris was in the dugout. He had pitched just 2 days earlier, and he was going to be promoted to Double-A later on that night, so he was not eligible to pitch. And Eric Sekula, of course, had been promoted long ago to the Fisher Cats, so it really was a DJ-dominated night. And in the end, the North was able to win with 4 runs on the top of the ninth. They won 6-4, so a great game and a great night. It was a little rainy to start, but with all those Blue Jays out there, it didn't feel like nearly an hour-long rain delay. It was a lot of fun in Bradenton.
Speaking of dominant, it's tough for a reliever who isn't a closer to get recognition unless he gives up nothing. And Will Browning right now is giving up absolutely nothing. It's been bagel every single time. Has there been a noticeable change between him last year and this year?
I really don't think so. He was just as good last year, Jesse. I think you know it as well. He was bumped up real quick from Lansing, and we all know he's got that right-hand sidearm delivery, the low slot, with the sinker, slider, changeup combination, and he really has seemed to develop a lot of confidence. And you can understand maybe he wasn't feeling his best after being sent back down from Double-A, but he didn't show it. He's been pitching tremendously well as of late, and he's been able to go usually just 1 inning, but on a couple of occasions he's gone 2 frames, and that's always encouraging. He really has been rock solid out of the bullpen, and he hasn't been in too many situations this year, Jesse, with inherited base runners, so maybe that's the next step for him. But so far this year, 17 innings, no earned runs. That's a goofy stat. 1 unearned run allowed, and he's 2-1 this year, so a tough luck loss for him earlier this season. But opponents hitting 150 against him this year, 19 strikeouts, 5 walks for Will Browning. And he's one of many guys in the bullpen who you think to yourself, this guy could be in Double-A today or tomorrow, as well as he's been able to pitch.
It has to be fun for you. On the other hand, for the players, staying inspired, staying motivated, as we talked about. So let me ask, we're nearing the end of June and heading into July and then August. What are you looking forward to seeing? What questions do you have about your DJ squad that you would like to see answered during the summer?
Well, they certainly have a big hole to fill in the starting rotation with Daniel Norris up in Double-A. So with Jesse Hernandez doing a great job in long relief during the last month or so, it'll be fun to have him back in the rotation. Looking forward to seeing what he can do as a part of that starting pitching squad. And with the new players coming up, there's been a lot of hype, I'd say, at least in Dunedin, about L.B. Dantzler, and we saw what he was able to do in Lansing, but mostly the numbers from his time in Vancouver when he won Player of the Year in the Northwest League, that's got everybody excited up here, so we're looking forward to seeing what LB can do. And he's got some big shoes to fill with the league leader in RBIs, Casey Hobson, up in Double-A. LB has already had several chances with runners in scoring position. In fact, he was 1 for his first 7 with runners in scoring position in just 3 games because of, as we all know, Dwight Smith Jr. and Dalton Pompey getting on base like crazy. But he was able to come through yesterday in a big way. He got the go-ahead single as part of a 4-run 7th-inning rally for the Blue Jays. They were down 3-0, and his single put them ahead 4-3 after they tie the game by sending 9 men to the plate. But Dantzler, he's shown a propensity for clutch hits so far. He has a couple RBIs already, and that's going to be a big factor in the Blue Jays' potential success this half to see if LB can step up and rise to the FSL challenge. So we're looking forward to that. And, of course, the 2 new catchers behind home plate.
This is the gentlemanly Tyler Murray, voice of the Dunedin Blue Jays, joining us on Around the Nest. Tyler, our question of the week on the topic of base brawls. Have you seen a benches clearing situation in your tenure, either broadcasting baseball or attending games?
Not in person, actually. However, everyone down in the FSL will tell you about the wild brawl last year between the Daytona Cubs and the Clearwater Threshers at Jackie Robinson Ballpark in Daytona. The issue started with a hard slide breaking up a double play into second base, and long story short, everyone started talking, and the benches hadn't cleared yet, but then some people came out, and it seemed like the situation was dying down, but then Jorge Soler, the Cuban prospect for the Cubs, ran to his dugout, grabbed a bat, and then sprinted over to the visiting dugout and started yelling and waving the bat over his head, and he was suspended for a week, got injured a week later at the All-Star game, and then never played again. So that was quite the wild experience. And it was interesting to hear Tom talk about how he would call, or how he did call a brawl, because it does sound like a pretty hectic experience. And I remember listening to my colleague Robbie Aaron call that one, and he was going berserk. I mean, you can imagine a big guy like Soler grabbing a bat. You never know what's going to happen after that. And in the end, he was suspended, and nobody got hurt, but that's probably the wildest brawl type experience I've heard about in the FSL, at least in the last couple of years.
It's our job to relay the information to those who can't see it. But my gosh, you can feel totally helpless. It's to relay great information, the fantastic news, thrilling highlights, dramatic plays, but boy, during a brawl, you're saying everything as you see it, and you don't want to get emotionally charged, and yet you worry about folks' safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that case, it wasn't necessarily, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. Hey, here's a fight. Wow, the guy's finally getting to go at it, yada, 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 what the young fan likes sometimes like to see in the sport of hockey. People like fighting for whatever reason. That was just dangerous. That was, oh, this guy must have just snapped. I hope everyone stays safe. But fortunately, he was restrained, I think, by hitting coach Mariano Duncan, who's a pretty big guy in his own right. So that was a wild one. And in a way, I certainly hope I don't see a brawl anytime soon, but you never know. Tensions tend to flare, especially in the dog days of summer in the FSO.
The DJs close out a brief 2-game series tonight at Clearwater and then host Brevard County this weekend. Tyler Murray with the Dunedin Blue Jays, thank you very much and best of luck.
You got it, Jesse. Talk to you in a week, my man.
You got it. Well, we're going right on down the ladder from AAA Buffalo to AA New Hampshire to A Advanced Dunedin. And now I'm joined by my broadcast colleague with the Lansing Lugnuts, Single A Midwest League, Trey Wilson, coming off the All-Star break. Trey, how you feeling?
Wonderful. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let's talk about bench-clearing brawls and situations such as that. Lugnuts had one earlier this year. Have you seen any others in your tenure or as a fan?
Yeah, several. I've been a part of some, but let's not talk about those. Most of them that I saw were during my college days. There were a few there. Nothing too serious, but mostly just what you saw, like what you and I saw with Fort Wayne earlier this year, where there's a lot of mouthing off and shoving, maybe a little bit of shoving, but no real violence, I guess you could say. No, nothing boiled over like we saw the other night with New Hampshire.
Well, the interesting question from Bluebird Banter: what's the best way for a broadcaster to call a brawl? What do you think?
Like the same way you would call anything. I don't know. I guess if we had a fight night bell sound ready to drop, that would be fun, I guess. But there's really just the same as you call everything else. Just describe what you see and try to avoid being too one-sided for your guys. Try to give both sides of it.
With the Lansing Lugnuts, the break is now over. Lugnuts have started off the second half of the year. Matt Dermody hit around again. Lugnuts lost yesterday 10-4 to Bowling Green. Keys to the second half for Lansing. The Lugnuts did not make the playoffs in the first half, so what will they have to do for these next couple of months?
The offense has been there. It's really up to the starting pitching. We haven't seen really anybody that's been able to consistently step up in the rotation aside from Jeremy Gavoriski. Matt Dermody has hit a bit of a skid here. Chase DeYoung hasn't really hit his stride yet this season. Frank Viola, we've seen him for 2 starts. They've both been against the same team. We'll see more tonight when he pitches against Bowling Green Hot Rods. And obviously with his age, if he comes in and continues to do anything that even remotely well, they're going to move him up pretty quickly because he's a bit older than most of the other guys at this level. But the rotation, Brad Allen, we hope we see him healthy and back in the rotation soon. That will certainly help. He had been pretty consistent, but just some consistent starting pitching that can come in and keep a team under 5 runs. It's been a rarity over the past few weeks.
The bullpen has not always been trustworthy, but the All-Star Griffin Murphy certainly has done his job. Murphy's been getting better and better. Unlike perhaps Dunedin might have expected to see Dalton Pompey to get called up, and Pompey is still there, start of the second half, there's Murphy still there, back end of the Lugnuts bullpen, ready to go in the second half.
That's right. He has 11 saves this year and 13 tries. He's been very good. ERA is under 2. The strikeout numbers are way up. He has been really as reliable as you could ask for.
Murphy was one of 4 Lugnuts All-Stars. It was him, it was Matt Dean, it was Mitch Ney, it was Derek Lovelace, but they were not the only Lugnuts representatives at the All-Star game. You were there, too. You were there at the Midwest League All-Star Game in West Michigan. So how was that experience?
It was a good time. It was great to see all the aspects from all across this league and the guys that have performed so well through this first half, and to see everybody from across the league coming together and, catching up and chatting. And really the biggest thing was to see how far the Whitecaps have come with repairing Fifth Third Ballpark in such a short amount of time, where almost half the stadium was destroyed by a fire back in early January. And in just a few short months, they had it all the way back up and running and ready to go. That was pretty phenomenal to see.
So the All-Star game is now past. Second half is now underway. And the offense is still hitting. As you mentioned, the offense has been good. Lugo, 3 more hits yesterday. Matt Dean, a couple of walks, scoring some runs. I asked this question to Tyler Murray, and so I'm curious to see how you'll answer it. What questions personally for you would you like to see answered in July and August with this Lugnuts team and with specific players?
I want to see, can Derrick Lovelace sustain? He came out of the gates pretty hot last year with Bluefield and fizzled off pretty quickly. Now he's done well through 56 games now this year, but can he sustain and really make this last over a whole season? I think he can. Offensively, I think he can. So it'll be interesting to see what holds up for him. Can guys like Mitch Ney and Matt Dean, where are we going to start seeing the power out of those guys that we have yet to really see so far this season? I mean, we haven't seen very much power out of anybody on this team throughout the first half of this year. Dawel Lugo, defensively, he went through a stretch where he was completely solid. He had a tough night last night. Is he going to be able to be a consistent shortstop? I think so far we've seen no reason why he can't be, but there's still a lot of questions there. So that's something else that I would like to watch over the second half.
Trey Wilson joining us on Around the Nest, talking Toronto Blue Jays and the organization. Trey and I are the voices of the Lansing Lugnuts single-A Midwest League level. The Lugnuts lost both of their catchers, Santiago Nessie and Jorge Saiz, both getting the call up to high A Dunedin. It's great for the DJs. What does that mean for the Lugnuts?
Well, that means we have Daniel Klein and Mike Reeves now, which we've been know not really a whole lot about. So that's a huge hole in the offense. Hopefully Klein and Reeves can step in and take over what Saiz and Nessie had done for the first half. Those were two, especially Jorge Saiz. He was probably the most consistent bat in this lineup the first half of the season. And Nessie showed some flashes of being ready offensively, and he had really come a long way. So not only that at the plate, but as far as catching these pitchers, most of these pitchers had been pretty familiar with guys like Santiago Nessie and with Jorge Saiz. Now all that familiarity, you got to restart again with 2 new guys, new battery mates. So we'll see how it goes. I think. And there are a lot of questions still up in the air about that, so we'll see how it turns out.
It's going to be interesting to see how things proceed. David Harris in the starting lineup today in left field. I asked him, Trey, earlier today about his experience playing outfield, and he said a little bit extended, and he gave me a smile. So the Lugnuts hosting the Bowling Green Hot Rods tonight, Saturday and Sunday, and then after day off Monday, they stay home Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. You can go to LansingLugnuts.com for more information. And you can find Trey Wilson on Twitter at TreyWilson757. Trey, thank you very much, and we'll see how the baseball goes this weekend at all second half long.
Yeah, I'm anxious to get it rolling along. See you later.
Absolutely. And you can catch Trey and I tonight. Just go to LansingLugnuts.com and you can tune in via TuneIn Radio. Frank Viola III to the mound for his third start back in professional baseball. Since 2010 with Independent St. Paul, and since 2007 in the affiliated MLB and I believe the Appy League, the Chicago White Sox affiliate Bristol White Sox. So Frank Viola III's great story is continuing. Now we expect to hear from Kevin Fitzgerald of the Bluefield Blue Jays not too long from now. Meanwhile, the Vancouver Canadians unable to be joined by a Vancouver guest because, quite simply, Vancouver's playing right now. Canadians in action. They're in the top of the 7th inning. Spokane is currently leading them 6-3. Canadians so far this year. Having a quick check of their website, they're 3-3, 2.5 games behind Spokane. But you know what? They've won back-to-back Northwest League titles. They should be just fine as the season goes onward. There is magic at the Nat. There is tons and tons of magic with your 2013 winner of the John H. Johnson President's Trophy. The Vancouver Canadians back underway, and the Bluefield Blue Jays getting their season going as well. Bluefield in the Appalachian League, a level beneath Vancouver in the system. And earlier, the voice of Bluefield, the very new broadcaster, Kevin Fitzgerald, had the chance to catch up with Dan Jansen, and here's that conversation.
All right, it's opening day at Bowen Field. The Blue Jays about to take on the Johnson City Cardinals, and day one we're joined by Dan Jansen, a Wisconsin native in his second season with the Blue Jays minor league system. And Dan, you guys just got back from extended spring training. You're up here in West Virginia. You guys must be itching to get under the lights, get on some road trips, and get into the real minor league field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we didn't really have under the lights at all. Not many fans down on the G and extended, but yeah, that was a grind, but that was awesome. You know, it made me a better baseball player, and I'm really excited, you know, to play in front of the fans and play here in West Virginia. I mean, it's awesome.
You're with a lot of teammates that you played with last year when you were down in the Gulf Coast League. How gratifying is that to come up with a lot of players that you worked with last year in your first year in the minor league system here to Bluefield to play around the Appalachian League?
It's awesome having these guys up here. I mean, we already got team chemistry, and you know, we got new guys here from the draft, and you know, we're already good friends. Team chemistry's already coming along great, so it's going to be an exciting year.
Dan Jansen here with us, Wisconsin native in his second season with the Blue Jays organization. You're a really solid line drive hitter. You don't strike out a lot. You're able to work the count a lot. You draw a lot of walks. Where did you learn that disciplined style when you're up on the plate? How and where did you gain that composure while you're at the plate?
I mean, I guess when I was young, I was never really a strikeout hitter. I was always just line drives. My dad always preached line drives. You know, short, quick bat. And, you know, I guess the good eye, I was running the family. And my brother played college baseball, had a great eye. We always draw walks, and that's just ran upon me.
You just went through your first off season after your first year in minor league baseball. What was that routine like, getting ready as you progress now year to year in a minor league system? What was that off season routine like for you?
You know, it was at first, you know, I slept in a little bit just to recuperate from the long season, but I mean, it was a really good routine that I had. You know, I worked out twice a day at this Wisconsin, you know, Wisconsin known gym, and I mean, it was just a grind, man. I wanted to get ready for this season really bad, and I'm going to make some improvements and just prepare.
Dan Jansen here with us on a Blue Jays Spotlight opening day here at Bowen Field. And you were someone who originally said when you were drafted by the Blue Jays last year, you wanted to start your pro career very quickly.
Yeah.
You spent, like I said, your first summer down in the Gulf Coast League in Florida. If Dan right now could talk to Dan before year one in minor league baseball, what would you have told him about how to prepare yourself for this type of grind?
I mean, it's all mental, really. You know, the GCL, that's a mental grind, really. You know, day in and day out, just preparing yourself mentally was the biggest thing. So, you know, I was just telling him, you know, be ready to not succeed right away and be ready to be, you know, mentally prepared every day.
Dan, you're going to be back behind the plate this year. You're a catcher. You got to tell me influences when you grew up watching the game of baseball behind the plate. Catchers you try to emulate, try to mimic your game after. Who are some of your favorites out there?
Right now, Jairo Molina. I mean, he's the best. You know, I'm sure a lot of catchers, you know, influence their game, you know, for Yachty. But I mean, my dad was a big catcher. You know, he's taught me a lot of stuff that I know now. And yeah, Yachty and Buster Posey are all guys that I watch now and mimic.
Dan Jansen here with us in his second year with the Blue Jays minor league organization. His first pitch is coming up here at Bowen Field shortly for opening day. And got to finish up on this. You're from Wisconsin. I think anybody would imagine that you're growing up close to Green Bay, a Packers fan, but you're not. You have to dispel the rumor here.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Chicago, so you know, my mom and dad, and my brother, they all grew up there, and you know, it rained upon me. It was hard going to high school with all Packer fans, you know, but I mean, that's just part of it. So it was, yeah, big Bear fan, big Chicago fan.
Bears-Packer rivalry, you can't really get better than that. So you were in the middle of the crossfire there, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, every day.
Dan Jansen here with us, a Wisconsin native, getting set for opening day here at Bowen Field between the Bluefield Blue Jays and the Johnson City Cardinals. Dan, really appreciate you joining us here. Good luck today.
Thank you very much.
So that was Dan Jansen of Bluefield, joined by the new Bluefield voice, Kevin Fitzgerald. We're joined by Kevin right now. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, Jesse, good to be here with you. Hope you guys are all right.
Hey, everything's going well. So we proceeded right on down the ladder and around the nest from AAA. Now we've landed in the Appy League. You just enjoyed opening day. Now maybe the result wasn't to your liking. Let me ask you about this team that you have. The opening day roster of the Bluefield Blue Jays, who excites you?
Yeah, there are a lot of good players, a lot of good young pitchers. I think I'm pretty excited to watch and see progress this season. They got a couple good left-handers, a couple guys that in this pitching staff in this bullpen that can really throw smoke. A right-hander who is in his first season playing rookie league ball and playing in the States, Alberto Guzman, Dominican Republic. He can really let it fly. He only stands at about 6'1", but this guy can touch about 95 on the gun. And the starter yesterday for the Blue Jays, went pitched into the fifth inning. That was Jesus Tinoco. He goes 3 consecutive scoreless innings to begin the ball game, and the next time through the lineup, that's when he ran into a little bit of trouble in the fourth and a couple batters into the fifth. But he really has got a fastball that's nearly untouchable, and he can get it up to 97. According to our pitching coach Antonio Caceres, he can really let it go and he can get it up there. So he is a very exciting pitcher to watch on the mound, just with the gas that he can bring. And I think one of the players that fans are pretty excited about is the man you just heard, Dan Jansen. A lot of talk about his progress and just the skills and the tools that he brings to the table. A lot of local fans around this area are excited to see what he can do. Because he got a good attitude, a good head on his shoulders, and he hit the ball hard yesterday when he was in the lineup.
Bluefield lineup, it starts off with Anthony Alford, and so I have to start off with Anthony. He has not played very many games over the past couple of years with the Blue Jays because of his football ambitions, and yet we have heard tantalizing tales about his talent. So what have you been able to witness?
Oh, he really can crush it. He went 1 for 4 yesterday, but he had a hard hit ball up the middle that actually was knocked down by the pitcher's foot in the first inning. That stifled a base hit. He had a single yesterday. He can just really mash the baseball, and he's got a lot of good power. He is a freak athlete. We actually watched him do a vertical leap, and this guy got over 40 inches. He's a football player and a baseball player. He's just a freak athlete on and off the field. He can run, covers a lot of ground in the outfield. And you're right, you mentioned his football aspirations as well. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore this upcoming year at the University of Mississippi down in Ole Miss. And he said, man, you really can't beat playing in front of 80,000 fans in SEC country. So a very athletic kid, very smart guy as well. Good guy to talk to. And it's just he has a good mentality. He's going to be here for about a month. He's only played a handful of games over the last couple of summers after being drafted by the Blue Jays, but he still wants to do this process. He wants to play over the summer, and then, he'll have to be brought back to Mississippi, in about July, in about a month or so. He'll probably spend a month here and do the football grind. So he wants to do it all. You have to give him credit for that. And Coach Dennis Holmberg, the manager of this Blue Jays squad, he says that he really wants Anthony to sink his teeth into the baseball mode because he thinks he can be very successful there, and I think he will be whichever path he takes.
Anthony has not played too many games because of football. Jake Anderson has not played too many games because of his health. And yet now he looks healthy. He's back. So tell us, how does he look to you?
You watch his BP. It's, grab some popcorn and sit back and enjoy it because he can really hit the ball. He had a single yesterday. He's just got good size, really good frame. He's 6'4", 200-plus pounds, and he really can run the outfield, run around the outfield well as well, not just his bat, but he's just built. And I think that's where he gets his drive from. It's where he gets his power from. He's got really quick hands through the zone. I think a couple of guys that we observed that just have quick hands through the batter zone is Anderson one, and I mentioned Jansen before. Those guys can really get their hands through quickly. And you can see he had a base hit yesterday, and he was probably one of the stars and will be soon enough for this team.
Nice start to the season for you. 3 games at home against the Johnson City Cardinals, and then off you go, 3 quick games at Kingsport. So the Appalachian League, we're going to ask you about your experience over the course of the season, but how are your first impressions? What do you think of Bluefield coming in from Syracuse, just following your graduation? Welcome into professional baseball.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a great little town. It really is. Bluefield, it straddles the border of West Virginia and Virginia, and actually part of the parking lot here at Bowden Field is half in West Virginia and half in Virginia. So it's a pretty interesting little setup. But the field is in great condition. Our head groundskeeper Mike White, who also coaches the Bluefield College baseball team here in town, has done a terrific job getting it ready. We're actually taking on a little bit of rain this afternoon, but we should be ready to go for 7:05 first pitch. The field is great. The fans are happy that Bluefield baseball is back. So you're right. I'm looking forward to getting on the road and experiencing some other parks around the Appalachian League, because I've heard there are some great facilities. There are some great parks out there. And, I'm excited to get it going. And you're right, we'll be at Kingsport on Sunday, start of a 3-game stand there, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But I think these guys they're interested in just getting a little revenge after yesterday's loss against Johnson City.
Bluefield has one of the great characters in baseball with manager Dennis Holmberg. You mentioned his name. What was your first impression of Dennis?
Yeah, he's just a true professional. He really is. I think that the one thing that is so invaluable about his style is just the structure that he brings to the table. And you walk into his office, and you can't help but notice about a dozen clocks in his office, and that's the way punctuality and structure. That's always what he's been about. And he preaches that to the players, and I think they understand that, and they soon will understand that absolutely, because he keeps it professional. A funny guy. He gets along well with his players, as he's done everywhere. Managed close to a decade up in Auburn, New York, before coming down here to Bluefield. So he's just a great baseball mind. He's been around the game for since the 70s, and has been in the Blue Jays organization for decades, save for 1 year along the path. He knows this franchise. He knows the people that he's working for, and he knows this community. You should have seen the reception when he and his team came in on Sunday afternoon after they got off the flight coming up from Florida, and we had to meet the Blue Jays fan introduction event right here at Bowen Field. They love him. He's someone who's been entrenched in this community. He just brings a good energy. I think that's one thing that he also has, is that he's able to keep his players structured, and he knows how to manage this game, but he also just brings an energy that really livens up this place. And it's really beneficial.
Joined by Kevin Fitzgerald of the Bluefield Blue Jays. 1 game into the Appalachian League season. It's a little bit of a sprint. It's a lot of fun. And all the players who come through Bluefield never forget it. They have a great time. They tell stories about Dennis. They tell stories about Bowen Field. 75 years of Bowen Field, just the history. Do you have a feel?
Right.
Is there an easy idea to get a feel for the history of Bowen Field when you arrive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing you first notice is the orange seats. You think, okay, it's Bluefield Blue Jays. You probably wouldn't think orange is the name of the color of the seats, but and you mentioned it's because this team dates back to the not only just the 50s when it started in affiliation with the Baltimore Orioles, but this team goes back all the way to the 1920s and 30s when the Appalachian League first sprouted up. And I think that's one of the quirky elements about this park is, you have these orange seats, in the grandstands behind the plate and near the dugouts, and it's because this team had a 50-plus year affiliation, 53 years with the Baltimore Orioles, and there's a lot of history about that. Cal Ripken Jr. played in this league, played in this park at Bowen Field. That's got to be one of the most interesting parts about it. It's kind of a little homage, I guess you could say, to the Orioles' past, and now obviously with the Blue Jays for the 4th consecutive year affiliated with Toronto. There are a lot of cool elements about this park, and we had a chance to talk to a lot of the Bluefield College baseball players that play here during the spring, and they gave us the lay of the land to the parks. I'll say this: if you got a good right-handed batter who can pull the ball, the ball flies out of here down the left field line. So I think that's going to be the money zone this year at Bowen.
The 2014 Jim Nance Award winner is the top collegiate sportscaster, Kevin Fitzgerald. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us. Time's running short, but we hope you'll check in with us all year long on Around the Nest.
Hey, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Jesse.
From Kevin Fitzgerald in Bluefield, Trey Wilson in Lansing, Tyler Murray in Dunedin, Tom Gauthier in New Hampshire, and Ben Wagner in Buffalo, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strasser with the Lansing Lugnuts. Thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the baseball. We'll be back next Friday.